Tom, when you went about kind of mapping out where all public loos were and who were responsible for them, what did you find about actually who's taking ownership?
Well, we found very quickly that no two toilets are the same in this country. They all seem to have their kind of own particulars and identity. So when we started, we relied a lot on people very kindly telling us and where kind of toilets were, and we also spoke to a lot of councils because local authorities running and taking ownership of public toilets. And you would what we tended to find would happen is you would go to a council and go, oh, we're just wondering which one of your which of your public toilets are available. You've got a list on your a bit of a list on your website, but it can't surely just be two. And they go, oh, actually, if you speak to our parish councils, they will have the details for you. You're like, yeah, brilliant, I'll speak to the parish councils then. And then they go, all right, here's a list of 90 just for our area. And then you go to you start working your way through parish councils, and then the parish council goes, well, actually, we do have some toilets, but they're run by community teams who keep them going. So therefore it's another break. So what we tended to find is and I guess a real light has been kind of shone on this because of the pandemic, is the buck of I guess ownership of public toilets is sort of thrown down the road a little. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. All the people give us comments when they've been sending us locations, and a lot of the comments for community or toilets in villages or towns which are going are always really, really positive. And I think it's because these are people who they really need them, they rely on them. They, I guess, in a sort of strange way, they kind of love them because they're an essential part of where they live. But it means that there's no consistency. So there are some areas that we found there'll be toilets, but there might be no, we've not been told, or what we found or discovered is there's no baby change or disabled access for people in certain areas, but there are in others. And you have these kind of, you can get these black spots developing where there's just no kind of coverage or availability of toilets at all. So it's incredible. Toilets are incredibly fragmented, and I think one of the bits that I've learned is, I think Wales, they have to, every local authority in Wales has to set a toilet strategy as to how they're going to run and manage and where they're going over the next 5 years or whatever. But that isn't the case for the rest of the country, and I do wonder whether that is a good approach or not. It sounds like it might be working in Wales. Certainly we've got a lot of locations plotted across Wales, but so certainly that's what we learned. No two toilets are the same, and by that happening, it does mean that they're easier, I think, to fall away and fall off the map, because it only takes one that's been running by a community that can't support it anymore, and therefore you're losing maybe one or two a week, or so it all adds up.
Ian, you've got great experience of working with local authorities in that sort of fragmented environment. What are some of the lessons that perhaps we can take into this discussion about public washrooms?
Yeah, I think I can echo a lot of what Tom was describing there. We've in terms of changing place, obviously this probably reflects the whole market. You've got different views and passions. I think successful businesses or local authorities who have a long-term view will always will provide a good facility that will last. You've got others who will, unfortunately, they'll pay lip service to getting a changing place in a washroom, and then as soon as it's completed, they either don't want to or not interested in the long-term maintenance of it, or they just forget about it, as Tom said, because we've seen that quite often where we've worked with a campaign has done fantastic work with local authorities to get something in place, and then we install it, and then 6 months, 12 months later, when we go back to maintain it, it's just not used. There's no signage. I mean, I went to one person down in Newbury Leisure Centre where there was a folded up table tennis table pulled across the door, so there's no way anybody could access it. And I think it's that it's having a joined up approach, which we've all discussed, in this chat now. It's having a joined up approach with a common goal, because I think all the different elements at the moment, with retailers, with government, with campaigns, everybody's got a slightly different view, and it doesn't work. It's got to be a long-term view. I think that's my the strong emphasis. It's got to be long-term. It can't be short-term.
So, Rich, $1 million question: who should take ownership and give us that strategic long-term view?
I think it's got to come from the government and filter down, because it's the only way that we will actually land some form of sort of strategic direction, I guess. And as Tom said, it seems to be working in Wales. There seems to be some consistency and that side of things. And is it part for us to lobby that situation, to start that ball rolling? Then possibly. And I think it does need that top down approach, because as we know at the moment, it's sort of filtering down. We'd like you to do it, okay, we will, but gradually it tails off at the end, and then funding becomes tight or budgets become tight, and they're one of the first areas to look at to go. So I think as I said before, in terms of the infrastructure, there's an element of ensuring that it's part of that infrastructure, but also the impact of not having them is key. And I think there's something that we can do to ensure that there's a realization of what the service that they provide really offers to the local community, both upwards and downwards. So I think it really does need a top-down approach, and I think, judging between what people have said, that's the only way it will be successful.
Raymond, when we've spoken in the past, you've talked about that no one wanting to be the Minister for Lose.
Absolutely.
That wasn't my pitch either, by the way. So
well, it actually comes back into Wales, and I'll just clarify one of the points. We did an extensive bit of work in Wales in putting the Public Health Act together with that time was Mark Drakeford, who was the minister. He's now First Minister, but at that time he was the minister we were working for, and it was Mark Drakeford who came to us and said, listen, we're putting together a Public Health Act for Wales. We're going to look at pharmacies and well-being centres and tourist information and highways and all the rest of it. But one of the things we really realise is public toilets are an absolute necessity. If we want to make Wales a beautiful place to come and visit and live in and work in and whatever, and for our children to grow up, then toilets are absolutely vital to that whole game. So he was switched on, and we didn't have to push at that door. And literally we worked with the departments. We worked with Karen and the team and Claire, whatever it was, at Changing Places. We worked with Crohn's and Colitis and a number of other groups, and we pulled all that legislation together. So there is you're quite right, Tom. There's a strategy. Every council in Wales has to put a strategy now to deliver public toilets, but actually that strategy doesn't have any effect on delivering public toilets. There's no outcome. They have to sit down and look at whether they need them or not. They have to try and decide how many people with accessible issues they have. What about tourism? What about children going to and from school, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't put a compunction on them to build any more toilets or do anything. However, there is a strategy. At least every council is thinking about it. And what we are now looking for through Simon Clarke and through the ministry, and it probably comes down to Matt Hancock, whatever, because he's the Minister for Health in England. It really comes down to this is a health and well-being, which is where we started off. And really the Department of Health should be taking the lead on this and saying toilets are about health and well-being. So, what do we need to do to make sure there's toilets? And they should be working with this group and with government or with the local authorities to try and make that happen.
Perhaps Mark Drakeford's a good advert for this then. If
Very much so.
The minister that gets to grips with it makes it to the top quicker.